This is what happens sometimes in America if you are a black woman. Just imagine, two cops confront a black woman at her own apartment pool. She shows ID, proof she lives there. Still, they press. Still, they doubt. Why? Her name is Jamie Freeman. Her crime? Relaxing while being a black woman. A white neighbor hit record. The footage? Explosive. Social media lit up. The outrage was loud. And what followed? You won't believe what happened. If you love interesting stories like this that expose the truth, please give this video a thumbs up and tell us in the comments section where in the world you are watching this video, and also do well to smash that subscribe button. Jamie Freeman just wanted a quiet afternoon by the pool. But when two officers showed up questioning her right to be there, a silent neighbor hit record, and nothing in their Phoenix community would be the same again. The desert sun blazed overhead as Jamie Freeman slipped on her sandals and grabbed her water bottle filled with sweet tea. Sunday afternoons meant everything to her. Not because they were peaceful, but because they were hers. That small slice of time after the work week's chaos was sacred. She tucked her favorite novel under her arm and walked the short path from Building C to the community pool. The air in Phoenix had that late summer heat, but the breeze made it bearable. Jamie loved this walk, past the trimmed desert plants, past the same faded no glass container sign, past the patch of grass where neighborhood kids left their pool toys. She found her usual chair near the deep end and settled in. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. She read, she sipped, she adjusted her sunglasses and tried not to think about Monday's deadlines. Then she noticed the black and white patrol car crawling past the gate. Slowing down. Backing up. Two officers stepped out. They didn't walk with urgency, but with that bored kind of purpose. Like they already knew who they were coming for. Jamie's shoulders tensed. She sat up straight, closing her book softly. "Afternoon," the taller officer said, his hand resting on his belt. "Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Jamie blinked. "I live here. Just enjoying the pool." "Can we see your ID?" the second officer asked. He had pale skin, sharp features, and the kind of face that didn't blink often. Jamie reached into her bag. "Sure. I've got my key card too. Is there a problem?" "We got a call," Officer Martinez said. Someone reported a suspicious individual hanging around the pool area. Jamie handed over her driver's license and community-issued access card. Suspicious how? Martinez didn't answer. Instead, he passed the card to his partner, Officer Collins, who examined it like he'd never seen plastic before. Collins looked up. "You said you live here. Which unit?" "Building C, apartment 218. Moved in March. I've got my lease at home if you want to see it." Collins raised an eyebrow. "Building C, huh? That's not usually the profile we see for that address." Jamie caught the tone. She'd heard it before. Polite words carrying an accusation like a hidden blade. She exhaled through her nose. "Look, officers, I'm not trying to make trouble. I'm just out here reading. That's it. You got any guests? Anyone else supposed to be meeting you here?" Martinez asked, flipping through a small notepad. "No, just me." There was a pause. One of those long silences where nobody says what they're really thinking. From the second-floor balcony of Building B, someone watched. Sarah Mitchell leaned against the railing, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the record button. She knew Jamie. They weren't best friends, but they spoke often enough about their dogs and which restaurants delivered fastest. She didn't like the way those cops were standing. Too close, too casual with their questioning. Collins handed the key card back slowly. "All right, just doing our job." But he didn't leave. He looked around like he was still waiting for Jamie to mess up somehow. "You understand, right?" Martinez added. "It's not about you. We just have to check when we get calls." Jamie stood up. I understand you're here because someone thought I didn't belong. Nobody answered that. But down the street, another neighbor walked her golden retriever past the pool gate and barely got a glance. Jamie didn't yell. She didn't raise her voice or flex her rights the way some might expect. She'd learned long ago that the louder she got, the less people listened. So she stayed measured. She looked Officer Martinez square in the eye. Let me ask something. Did the caller say what I was doing that made them uncomfortable? Martinez scratched at his neck. They just said there was a woman they didn't recognize sitting by the pool. Looked like she didn't live here. No mention of threats? Arguments? Any kind of disturbance? No. Then I'm just a woman sitting by the water, reading a book and sipping tea. Collins clicked his pen. Ma'am, we don't make the calls. We just respond. And right now, we're responding. Jamie kept her hands visible, her voice steady. I understand. But what I'm saying is that I've lived here for months. I've paid my rent like everyone else. If someone can call the cops on me for that, then what exactly am I allowed to do? The air between them grew tight. Collins took a step closer. You don't need to get defensive. Jamie didn't move. I'm not being defensive. I'm being real. All right, ma'am, Martinez interrupted. Let's not escalate things. Can you take us to your unit? Jamie blinked. Right now? If you don't mind. She did mind. But she also knew what might happen if she said no. From her balcony, Sarah pressed record. She couldn't hear everything, but she saw Jamie's body language calm still, but clearly tired of this back and forth. One of the officers was standing far too close, invading her space in that slow, deliberate way that felt more about dominance than safety. I'm not comfortable letting you into my home when I haven't done anything wrong, Jamie said. That landed like a challenge. Collins squinted. Then how do we know you really live there? Jamie pointed to her ID. Because my name matches the address. Because I showed you my pool access card. And because I know how many parking spaces come with my unit. Then, from across the courtyard, another voice rang out. She lives there. Everyone turned. Sarah, now standing at the edge of her balcony, held up her phone. She lives here. That's Jamie Freeman, Building C. I see her walking her dog every morning at 7. She's lived here since March. The two officers hesitated. Ma'am, please stay on your property, Collins called up. I am on my property, Sarah snapped back. And I'm filming this because I've seen enough of these videos to know how they end. Jamie glanced up at her and gave the smallest nod of thanks. That moment, the neighbor, the camera, the exposure, it changed the energy. Martinez's tone softened. All right, Ms. Freeman. I think we're good here. Appreciate your cooperation. But Jamie didn't answer. She sat back down in her chair, picked up her book, and stared at the open page without reading a word. The officers stood there for a few more awkward seconds before heading back toward their patrol car. As they pulled away, Jamie leaned back and closed her eyes. Her afternoon was already over. But as the sun pressed on, so did the questions burn at the edge of her patience. Sarah stayed at her balcony longer than she meant to. She watched the patrol car drive slowly toward the exit gate, then pause as the officer spoke through the window before finally rolling out of sight. Inside, her daughter Maya peeked around the doorway. Why were you filming them? Sarah turned, still holding her phone like it was fragile. Because things like that don't always end well. And if something had happened, I wasn't going to be the neighbor who just looked away. Maya frowned. But nothing happened, right? Sarah paused. That doesn't mean it was okay. Down by the pool, Jamie sat still. No phone, no music. Just her, and the book she was no longer reading. She'd seen this before. The slow build of assumptions, the casual questioning of her right to exist in spaces she paid to occupy. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on Jamie's door. Not pounding, just 3 taps, polite but sharp. She checked the peephole. It was Sarah. Jamie opened the door, unsure. Sarah didn't wait for her to speak. I recorded everything. I figured you might want it. Jamie blinked. Seriously? Yeah, Sarah said, handing over her phone. I thought they were pushing too hard. You didn't do anything wrong, and they wouldn't let it go. It didn't sit right. Jamie played the video, watched herself stand there uncomfortable but composed, watched the officer's body language, watched how close they got. When it ended, she looked up. Thank you. Really? Sarah shrugged. You shouldn't need someone watching just to be treated like a neighbor. That gesture planted something in Jamie, something that had been buried under layers of tolerance and resignation. She didn't sleep much that night, lying in bed with her eyes open, listening to the wall clock tick. The next morning, Jamie made a decision. She sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. She'd been documenting things for months, emails from management, photos of her clean patio after false complaints, records of every small slight that had built up since she moved in. She created a folder labeled Pool Incident and transferred Sarah's video to it. Then she created another folder, Pattern. This wasn't about one afternoon. It hadn't been for a while. She opened a new email. Formal complaint regarding incident on August 13th, 2025. She didn't write it angry. She wrote it like someone tired of not being believed. She kept it factual. Time, place, officers' names. She explained the exchange at the pool, attached Sarah's video, included statements from other neighbors who had witnessed the scene. When she finished, she read it 3 times before hitting send. She didn't feel relief. She felt like she just lit a match in a room full of paper. By Wednesday morning, Sarah's video had been shared more than 500 times on social media. The Phoenix Community Herald picked up the story with a headline, "Woman harassed by police while relaxing at her own pool. Neighbor's video tells the truth." The community's Facebook group turned into a battlefield. She could have just shown her ID and moved on. Why are we attacking our officers for doing their job? If it were me sitting out there, no one would have called the cops. Wonder why that is. This community has always been welcoming. Don't let outsiders twist that. Jamie read a few threads, then stopped. The moment people started debating whether she seemed aggressive, she realized what she was up against wasn't logic. It was comfort. People defending the world as they wanted to see it, not as it really was. 2 days later, the city issued a formal notice. Officers Martinez and Collins had been placed on administrative leave pending review. Then came the knock. A local news reporter stood at her door, holding a microphone. "Ms. Freeman, we were hoping to ask a few questions about what happened." Jamie hesitated. Why? Because a lot of people saw that video, and I think they're waiting for you to say something. Jamie stepped outside, arms folded. Fine. You want a quote? I'll give you one. The reporter lifted the microphone. "I was just trying to relax," Jamie said, steady but firm. "Someone decided I didn't look like I belonged, and instead of asking me, they called the cops. The cops didn't ask either, they assumed." That's what this is about. Assumptions. It's about how quick people are to protect their comfort and how slow they are to protect someone's dignity. The interview aired that same night. By morning, Jamie's inbox had 50 new messages. Some from strangers thanking her. Some from old classmates she hadn't heard from in years. One from a woman named Angela Red. "They did that to my son last year. He's still afraid to walk alone. Thank you for not letting this slide." But there were others too, messages that felt colder. "Careful what battles you pick. Communities have long memories." 3 weeks later came the emergency community meeting. Saturday, 10 a.m., Clubhouse Lounge. Jamie showed up early. The room buzzed with strained tension. Everyone pretending they weren't there to see a storm hit. Sarah waved her over. Video still queued on her phone just in case. Mr. Washington, an elderly black gentleman from Building A, sat near the front with his arms crossed. A few others Jamie didn't know well gave her silent nods. The property management team sat behind a folding table. Brad Stevens, the property manager who often looked like he wished he was anywhere else, tapped the microphone. "Thanks for coming on short notice," he said. "We've all seen the video. I want to start by saying we hear the concerns. No resident should feel unsafe or unwelcome in their own home." Jamie leaned forward, waiting for the but. "We recognize that some of our policies may not reflect the inclusive environment we want this community to be known for," Stevens continued. Then Sarah stood up. "Are you going to issue a formal apology to Ms. Freeman?" Stevens looked around nervously. "We're reviewing all the steps that led to the incident." "That's not an apology," Sarah said flatly. More murmurs rippled through the room. Then a surprise. An older woman stood from the corner. Mrs. Rodriguez, a retired teacher who'd lived there since the complex opened. "I remember when different families moved in over the years," she said, voice strong. "People said the same things then, that they didn't belong, that things were going to change. And guess what? They did change. For the better. We're not going backward." A few people clapped, tentative but real. Jamie took a deep breath, then stood. "I didn't ask for any of this. I was just trying to enjoy my weekend. I'm not here to shame anyone, but I do expect to be treated like a neighbor, not a question mark." No one interrupted. "I hope we're not just here to talk," she added, "because I've got better things to do than relive the same moment every black woman I know has lived 10 times already." She sat back down. The room exhaled. Everyone knew this wasn't the end. It was just the part where people finally had to decide which side they were on. 3 months later, Jamie got the letter. The internal investigation had concluded. Officer Martinez received a formal reprimand for failure to de-escalate. Officer Collins was placed on extended unpaid leave with mandatory retraining. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something. The community had changed too. Not overnight, not dramatically, but enough. New policies were in place. Anonymous calls couldn't trigger automatic police dispatches without verification. Management added language explicitly banning racial profiling under the guise of security concerns. More residents began showing up to meetings. One evening, a mother stood up and said, "I used to be one of those people. I'd see someone I didn't recognize, and I'd tense up. I never asked why. I just assumed my discomfort meant danger. I'm sorry for that." Jamie didn't clap, but she heard her. That was enough. One Saturday morning, as Jamie walked her rescue dog Max past the clubhouse, a new family was moving in. Young couple, 2 kids. The father looked up, saw Jamie, and smiled. "You from around here?" "Yeah," Jamie said. "Building C." The man nodded. "Cool. Just moved in. I'm Marcus." "Welcome," Jamie said. "You picked a good spot." Later, she thought about that simple exchange. No hesitation. No stares. Just neighbors. That's what change looked like. Not fireworks or headlines, but normal moments that no longer felt like walking a tightrope. She got home, let Max off his leash, and stood looking out her sliding door. Same view, but it felt different, because she wasn't just existing there anymore. She belonged. And finally, other people could see it too. Stories like this aren't about heroes. They're about truth. And the truth is, we all have a role to play in what kind of world we choose to live in. If this story made you feel something, share it. Because this isn't just Jamie's story. It belongs to all of us. The end.